Hey everyone, my name's Tom Conrad. I'm one of the hosts of Real Recovery Talk. I want to take this opportunity and invite you into our Facebook group. It's called Real Recovery Talk Support Group. It's open to anybody. If you're an addict in recovery, if you need to be in recovery, if you're a family member or a loved one and somebody in your life is struggling with addiction, we invite you into this support group. We cover everything. You can have conversations with people. We build community in there, and we want to be support for you with whatever struggles you're going through. We are going to be going live in there periodically. It's already built up of a few hundred people, so get in there. It's at Real Recovery Talk Support Group on Facebook. Everybody, in this episode, it's myself, Ben, and a good friend of ours, Mike. Mike has a hell of a story, but let me ask you one simple question. Do you believe that smoking pot is truly sober? We, in fact, don't think that it is, and we're going to explain why in this episode. Mike has a story that includes sobriety, but it also includes a lot of marijuana use, and he thought he was sober at one point in time, but turns out that he really wasn't, and he comes on and shares with you his experience with the whole California sober marijuana maintenance. It's a bunch of baloney, doesn't work, all that and more. Enjoy the show. Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I am your host, Tom Conrad. In today's episode, we got Benjamin B.
What's happening, everyone?
And we have a gentleman by the name of Mike. Mike, hello, sir.
How's it going, everybody? How you doing, Tom? How you doing, Ben?
Good, sir.
First things first, thank you for tuning in on the podcast app, whichever one that you choose to use. And thank you for watching on YouTube. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you can always reach us. info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, that's info@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message. Right, peeps?
Let's get messy.
Let's do it.
All right. Mike, pull that mic just a tad closer.
Is that better?
Oh, perfect.
Hear me now?
Yep.
Good.
So, first time on a podcast, yeah?
Absolutely. That's why I didn't know how close I needed this thing to my face, Tom.
Yeah, right there is
Rookie
perfect.
move.
Yeah, that's good. So, just to give some context here, we've known you, Mike, for years at this point, and wanted to bring you on the show because you have an interesting story and an interesting perspective on particularly marijuana, the old devil's lettuce.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, in my opinion, if you are smoking pot, you're not sober. And hey, that's my opinion. Take it or leave it. And I think we're going to dive into that quite a bit.
Sounds good.
Ben, you got anything before we start?
No, I'm excited to kind of hear Mike's story. We've known each other for years.
Yeah.
And I started hearing your name even before we ever met from the meeting at St. Mark's.
Yep.
Your name, which is a meeting I've never gone to, ever. But somehow, like, people's names get brought up.
Well, how did you hear his name at St. Mark's if you've never been to that meeting?
Well, no, that they're always like, the guy Mike from the St. Mark's meeting.
Yeah.
And then you always know all the same people and hear all the same names, and then you're like, oh, finally I'm meeting this person. I've heard your name 1,000 times.
Yeah. I frequented St. Mark's for probably 3-4 years.
Yeah.
That meeting. Saturday morning, 9 o'clock.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah.
It's been a minute for me, but I'll tell you what, man, if what marks my story more so than anything, you sit in an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting and you wait till the end, and oftentimes when the meeting closes, what you'll hear is keep coming back. It works if you work it, right? So my recovery, my path, it's not been a straight line. I haven't batted 1,000 at this. I'm in a great place today. It's a direct result of doing the work and being 100% all in. But I've had opportunities to figure out what does work and what doesn't work. And we could talk a little bit about that. We can talk a little bit about marijuana, weed, smoking pot, and recovery, how that hasn't worked for me. I wanted to be the guy who could smoke pot and be sober at the same time, but that doesn't work, as silly as that sounds. That's what I was shooting for. I was always looking for a loophole. I have a good friend of mine that says I was the kind of guy that my entire life I wanted to tighten 9 out of 10 screws. I heard him say that one time in a meeting, and I said, if anyone ever explained me in a nutshell in my alcoholism, in my addiction, that's who I was. I wanted to tighten 9 out of 10 screws. It looked great on the outside, but that little bit of extra work, that putting 100% into it, I just didn't want to do it. Whether at times that was about giving back to other people, whether that was at times about, putting the program, putting God first in my life and not veering down the path of workaholism. So not to go too far off on a tangent here, but like I said, to reel it in, I've kept coming back. And I'll start by saying this, I'm not going to overdo it, but all glory goes to God, because my God makes crooked places straight. And that's a miracle. And that's exactly what he's done in my life. He's made crooked places and a crooked thinker, a straight thinker, and a guy who walks a straight path. So that's all glory to him.
Well, I'll tell you what, for never doing a podcast before, you're doing quite all right.
That's good. That's
So
reassuring.
you're good-
I need
yeah.
that, Tom.
You're a good speaker.
Pour it out on me.
So let's. I want to get quickly into the pot stuff, because that's obviously a very controversial topic. But in order to get there, we need to better understand your addiction as a whole. So give us the elevator version of your addiction, kind of where it took you to, and then we're going to transition.
Yeah, man. Real quick, 44 years old, native of New Jersey, South Jersey, moved to Florida back in 2002. So I'm here now 22 years. So I'm officially actually in Florida longer than I was in New Jersey. So that tips me into the category of a Floridian finally. But came down here to get sober. And I would say 18 of those 22 years I spent sober. The reason I came down here was an opiate addiction. You know, it took me down fast, struggled with alcoholism in my teenage years. I never drank because I liked to taste the beer, because I wanted a nice glass of wine. I drank because I liked the effect produced by alcohol. That's the bottom line. And that held true moving forward for any mind and mood altering substance that I've ever put into my body. Opiates really got their hooks in me. Came to Florida, got clean, got sober, and really built a great life, man. Was sober for 5 or 6 years, fully involved in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous for 3 or 4 of them. Met a woman, got married, still married to her today, 21 years together, 18 years married. That's a miracle too. And that marriage definitely has, property of AA stamp right on it, because that blessing wouldn't have come about without Alcoholics Anonymous and without sobriety. Got married, like I said, had a child, built businesses, got to a place in my late 20s where I got some success, some worldly success, right? So now I'm faced with some things and some choices and some options in my life that as a broke 21-year-old, you don't have. And my disease got talking to me. Hey, man, maybe you're not an alcoholic. You know you can't do hard drugs. Everybody kind of knows that. In the back of your mind, even if you're lying to yourself, you shouldn't be doing drugs, right? But alcohol, you've got some success, you got a marriage, you got this going on. In the interim, slowly sliding away from my friends in the program, falling deeper and deeper into workaholism, which for me is a big part of my story too. What I come to realize now is I never really knew how to identify myself as a child of God, as just another man in recovery, as somebody who was here to bring value and put value into other people's lives. When the alcohol and the drugs went away and some worldly success came my way, that became an addiction for me. And just like drugs and alcohol will cause you to shove your values and your morals aside, I started to see that same behavior manifest itself in my professional life, which ultimately led me back to drugs and alcohol. So at 27, fell off the wagon, started drinking, and that slowly led to, work bankruptcies, business losses, get my life back together, get sober for a couple years, had a couple relapses after some surgeries, but no real long-term relapses, just a pattern of get sober for 2 or 3 years, 4 years, stop doing what I need to be doing, which is to be active in a program of recovery, because I didn't want to do it, because I wanted to catch up on where I left off, get the stuff back. Now that now that's first place in your life. God, family, recovery, all that stuff that you want to say is first place in your life, if you're being honest, really isn't. That's starting to take a backseat to worldly success, right? So I knew by the process of elimination, I'm like, can't do opiates, can't drink, can't do benzos, because I'm hitting little bottoms on all these things, but I still don't like the way I feel. So I think, well, there's this whole thing going on in recovery now where people think that, you can smoke weed and still be sober in California. So whatever, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. California sober. Just you're smoking weed. That's all it is. So I wanted to give that a shot, man. And I would hear a lot in meetings, if you smoke weed, you're going to go back to your drug of choice if it's something beyond that, or you're going to go back to drinking if alcohol was your thing. And that's not my story. I haven't had a drink in 10 years. I haven't done opiates in 7, but I haven't smoked weed in over a year. It's a year now. And before that, probably 3 years. And both times were after injuries. And I'll explain a little bit more if you want me to. Do you want me to pause? Do you want to talk?
Pause there. I want to get
But
into a couple of things.
Tom, that just brings us up to present moment where I can talk about the marijuana. I wanted to give you a little bit of backstory on how, via the process of elimination, I realized that every single mind and mood altering substance I ever put in my body, I somehow managed to hit a wall.
Makes total sense. The one question that I had for you, at 27 years old, you had business success. What was that? What were you doing at that time?
I was in the mortgage industry in the height of the subprime lending era, and that's leading up to the crash of 2008.
And you were sober when you built this business of yours?
I was, yeah.
And so if you can reflect on that time, you're making good money. You're in Florida, prime hub for real estate for obvious reasons. How long were you sober, throughout that process of building that business?
I was sober from the time I got into that industry at 24 or 23 until I was 27. And I remained in it a couple years past that. But after that first couple years in that industry, as I was saying before, the gifts of sobriety, right, which was getting a career, started to take first place over sobriety, if that makes sense. So what happens is you start to worship the gift and not the giver, in a sense, right? The giver is God. Here's the gift, which is this success. I'm taking my eye off the giver and I'm focusing on the gift. Now I'm taking it into my hands. And what creeps in, man? Fear, insecurity. What if the bottom falls out tomorrow? What if I don't continue, with this success? What am I going to do? So now I got this voice in my head where instead of being driven on faith, I'm driven by fear. That causes me to make bad decisions. I don't know about you.
Yeah. No, makes sense. Take us to that time at 27 or at whatever age you were when you picked up. Where were you? What was going through your head? Like, did you know, okay, maybe I shouldn't do this, but I'm going to do it anyway?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you right now, I was 5, 6, somewhere in the middle, maybe 5.5 years sober, and I had a hernia surgery. And I hadn't really been active in my recovery for a couple years at that point. I was really just staying clean or dry, what I call in momentum. I had built a life in Florida. It didn't involve that. Therefore, I wasn't seeking drugs and alcohol. It wasn't part of my life. So it really wasn't something that I was ever going to pursue without a triggering event, right? So along comes this triggering event. Now this program's been pushed out of my life. I go into surgery. They give me opiates. And I can remember that hitting my body. The same feeling when I was 13 years old, when I got a little drunk and I felt this warmth creep through my body, like, oh, this is good. That was the same feeling that I got when they put those opiates in me. Only I said, this is bad. This is not good, because I knew what it was waking up. I got the prescription, didn't have anyone to be accountable to, didn't get honest, didn't talk to anybody and say, hey, maybe you can hold this prescription, went and filled it. And within a matter of a couple days, it was gone.
Well, that was going to be my question. Was there any sort of fear prior to surgery about getting opiates, or were you just like laissez-faire about it and they're probably going to write me a script? That's cool. I was
definitely laissez-faire about it, but if you want to peel back the onion even a little bit more, so the reason that I would drink or use drugs is to treat my alcoholism and my addiction, right? There's underlying symptoms of that, which using is one of them, which is discomfort in my own skin, agitation, fear, irritability. I had been feeling that in that career for probably a couple years at that point. So I was what we would call an AA, restless, irritable, and discontented, right? So there was something in the back of my head. I feel that I felt maybe some sense of relief that I knew that I was walking into that, because I would actually get relief from those feelings, as temporary and as they are and as destructive as they are. So I believe there was some of that looking back on it in hindsight, not just laissez-faire, but somewhat.
That's the insanity of it right there. Is it sounds to me, correct me if I'm wrong, like you diagnosed yourself an alcoholic and drug addict. 100%. You know you got this thing. Yep. Like you're screwed. But the thing that scares the hell out of me, and people don't do this, they stop going to meetings and stop doing all these things. And what I hear all the time is, you hear this regularly, like, I better get to a meeting because I'm already feeling a certain way. You need to be going to those meetings, doing the work, working with your sponsor, all the spiritual stuff prior to feeling that way. Because if a guy like me is feeling restless, irritable, and discontent, if I'm saying, oh, I better get to a meeting because I already feel this way, it's probably already too freaking late. Dude, I need to treat it ahead of time. I'm trying to keep the symptoms off, not letting the symptoms come in and then thinking I can fix it on the back end.
Right.
So you had the surgery that obviously reawoke the beast, but you've had a few relapses over the years. Was there always like a triggering event?
There was, oddly enough, it was always after a surgery. And what I come to find out is surgery is not the problem. Surgery was actually the solution to whatever issue I was going through. The problem was preceding that surgery, there was no game plan of how to come up against and defend myself from a potential relapse. It was just by the time I had gotten surgery, for whatever reason in my life, I'd be a couple years sober and I had rebuilt the life on the outside. The recovery aspect of my life became less and less important. Therefore, there was no defense against that. I wasn't armored up. I wasn't going to meetings. By the way, these are all get-tos today for me. I get to do this. I get to participate in that. If anyone's listening, this isn't some ball and chain that I have to walk around with, like, oh, I have to go to meetings, or I have to. It's a beautiful life. But at the root of my disease is selfishness and self-centeredness. So that wants me to not give back. That wants me to not go to meetings. That wants to isolate me. So when the time and inevitable time and day comes that I'm met with this opportunity to pick up because of wherever my life is, it's not ideal. There's actually a defense against that. What my disease wants is for me to not have that, because it is a disease, so I can just crumble in front of that disease and succumb to the temptation. So
here's the other thing. When you've separated yourself in a way like that, just to call it very in simple form, no one's there to call you out.
Yeah.
Like today, for me, like, consistently going to meetings, working with sponsees, like if I'm going to have surgery, my people are going to know. I'm going to mention it at some point, and they're going to say to me, oh, are you going to get pain meds after?
Yep.
Like I know tons of guys who just recently, it's been a weird thing lately. It's been a very common theme, who have had some very serious surgeries in the last few months with years of sobriety, and the amount of thought process and fear and mounting a defense before it becomes a problem is occurring in these instances, and these guys are making it through surgery. Whether they completely avoided it at the end because they were like, oh, I don't actually need to take this, or somebody helped them with it. There was one case, I won't say his name, but like had a very serious surgery, and to the point where he couldn't walk for like a few weeks, and was having to take oxys. Like, but the amount of support that he had was, unsurmountable. Like,
well, I've had two spinal surgeries in the last 14 months, right? So 14 months ago, I had a couple years sober, was very active in my program. Never in a million years would I have thought that I would have ever put a substance in my body again. But I'm going to talk about the insanity of it. I didn't relapse on painkillers. I had somebody completely I actually mounted a defense and left those pills in the hands of somebody else that gave me the appropriate dosage. And I hate to sound like a baby, but it's the truth. This is the way that pain pills need to be managed in my life if I have to take them. I can't manage the med locker, man. Somebody else has to do, and it's got to be off-site from my house. So I had somebody dispense them to me, somebody very close to me, and I never in a million years thought that I would have picked up weed. How that happened, and this is for our listeners out there who are maybe new in recovery and debating whether or not this is Delta 8 pot. Yeah, it is. So here's the insanity of it, right? We'll segue into weed. I'm still under the influence of painkillers, even though I'm not misusing them. So it is still clouding my mind a little bit. I hadn't been I said I was active in my program, but I wasn't giving back to other guys. And that's critical. So I was showing up, but I wasn't taking men through the work. So I wasn't accountable to other men in that respect, right? which is critical for me. I need to be accountable up to a sponsor, and I need to be accountable down to sponsees, right? So I walk into the gas station to buy a nicotine vape because apparently when I am on pain meds, I want nicotine. So I went in to do that. And I looked to the left and I saw that there was Delta 8 and I bought that. And I heard that still small voice, which I call the Holy Spirit, say to me, call your sponsor. I remember saying no to that voice, grabbing that thing, smoking it and saying, what did you just do? That is the insanity of addiction right there. I knew in my head that it was wrong. I knew in my heart that it was wrong. Yet I did it anyway. Why did I do it anyway? That's the $1 million question. Why did I do it anyway? Why did I not have a defense against that first one? What's the big book say, Ben? What has to come from what?
A higher power.
A higher power.
Yeah, man.
No, I heard that higher power's voice, but I didn't listen to it. Why? Because I wasn't accountable to anyone else.
Well, I'm really glad you talked. This is one of my pet peeves. You mentioned you weren't doing service work. Dude, in my opinion, I'm just going to come out and say it. And like, I know a lot of guys like this, so sorry if I'm putting you on blast and you're hearing this. Go ahead and assume it's you if you know it's you. But how many sponsees you got? None. Don't tell me you're working a program then.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to meetings. I don't care. In my book, you're not doing the deal.
Yep.
Point blank. If you're not giving away what's been so freely given to you by taking someone through the work, the unselfishness that comes with service work is a must. Because just like you said, we're selfish and self-centered. And if we're managing our life with selfishness and self-centeredness, we're screwed, man.
Yep.
Like, you got to be doing that. I don't think I'm adamant about that enough lately. Like, I'll meet guys that got years and years of sobriety. No, I'm really struggling lately. I'm like, oh, how your sponsees doing? I don't have time for that. I'm like, but you got time to call me and bitch.
Yeah. And I think this is my story is a cautionary tale, right? I believe that God is in a place where he's using me to be able to reach out to men who, maybe haven't done this 100%, maybe, have missed it a little bit, off 1 or 2 degrees to the left or to the right, and really need to understand how to get back on track and stay on track. So why that was important, man, is I realized that there was a blind spot there for me. Mm-hmm. That I really thought that I was armored up, and I wasn't. There was a chink in that armor. What that did for me, now look, nothing on the outside appeared any differently, man. It wasn't this devastating bottom like bankruptcies, loss of marriage, nothing like that. It was the most minuscule external bottom that I've ever had in my entire life, but it destroyed me inside and crushed my pride and ego, which I needed, and made me realize, Mike, you've never gone all in. Other than one time when you were 22 years old. You went all in for a few years and you built a life on that foundation. It's still intact today by the grace of God, right? But haven't gone all in since then and never wanted to, because after that first relapse, I never wanted to put the same amount of work in that I did from day one. So I met a guy who took me through the steps again, been the best experience in my life. I'd gone through the steps a couple times. First time when I was a young kid, it changed my life, man, completely. And now I've had an adult experience, I would say a mature adult experience as a 44-year-old man going through that. It's blown my mind what God's done to really unlock my heart in a way where there's such an attitude of service now, where it's not about what can I get out of it. It's about what can I bring to the table. That's not me. I've always wanted that. I've wanted to want that, but it just wasn't there. It had to come from him, man. I got through a surgery. This was a big deal for me, maybe not for a lot of people. Had a second spinal surgery in February of this year. You guys know, man, lost my right hand, had a spinal surgery, slowly coming back, praise God. But I did mount that defense, man, and it was a huge hurdle for me to overcome. I got through that surgery and stayed clean, stayed sober. No little, no trying to find a loophole, man. The loopholes are all closed up. But to me, man, that was evidence that when I go 100% all into this deal, I get those gifts 100% back, man.
Yeah.
So that was a huge turning point for me in my life, man.
Well, that's how you mentioned the chinks in the armor. Like the way that I spot them is by working with others. Because when I sit down with the sponsee, they're telling me about the chaos in their life. I'm giving them suggestions on how to live their life by principles and not stay in that chaos. And the first thing's going through my head is like, oh shit, I'm talking to myself.
Yeah.
Like I need to be taking my advice right now on this topic. One thing I want to touch on too, because this is like, dude, you're literally the dude in chapter 3 more about alcoholism. Yeah, that didn't touch a drop for 25 years. Remained bone dry for 25 years. Wouldn't touch another drop until he was successful in business. That's what it says. And we see this derail people both in early recovery. They don't even get on track and get to where they need to go. Or I've seen it with people with years who all of a sudden get this business success and they're like, but like it derails people. It's that mindset. Like that the program always has to come first. Always. Brad Jensen talks about that. Like, how'd you get successful in business? Well, I worked these things called the 12 steps. No, how'd you get successful in business? I told you, I worked these things called the 12 steps. You know, like
One thing that you said that I want to bring up, well, you didn't say it, but it deserves a few minutes. How often do we hear people, Ben and Mike, say, oh, if I'm going to relapse, I'm going all out?
Oh, all the time.
Right here we have somebody that has a history of abusing opiates. Opiates is, we'll just call it your drug of choice. I mean,
apparently, yeah.
Yeah. Yet not everyone, but recently your relapses weren't opiates.
Oh.
And I think that deserves a few minutes because whether it's opiates, pot, alcohol, it took you to the same place. Mm-hmm. And so when people say this, oh, if I'm going to relapse, I'm just going to, hit it out of the park, or I'm just going to disappear for days on end or whatever. That's not necessarily true. I think that's people trying to be cocky, ego, and or maybe justifying in their head that something like pot isn't going to be a relapse. But it doesn't matter because it has very little to do about the substances, but it has everything to do with your mental state, your spiritual state, and, all the things that encompasses that. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I just thought that was interesting that you have a history of opiates, but yet your recent relapses were pot.
Yeah. And it's my walk in recovery. It's almost been this sanctification process of peeling back these layers. Right. And what was left after all this dibbling and dabbling and trying was, here's weed. We're told in our society today, oh, it's innocuous. It's no big deal. It's medicine. It's right. That's what we're taught. That's what we're told. That's the narrative that's pushed on us, is that it's not a big deal. And for me, it couldn't be any further from the truth. Did it devastate my life where I'm on the street or do anything like that? No, but did it consume my thoughts? Absolutely. Did it isolate me from people in my life that are important to me? Yes, because I knew that I was looking at them in the eye and being disingenuous with them, that I was living a double life. My relationship with God's very important to me. That's been a gift through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And what I started to realize too was that relationship wasn't going to go any further. That was getting in the way of me growing spiritually. And my addiction, we talk about this all the time. There's a mental obsession involved in this, right? So when I put that into my body, it kicks that obsession in, even more so than before I ever put it in me before. So now my thought life is consumed with, do my eyes look ripped? Do they know? Oh, can I leave here? I'll smoke a little bit when I get home. Oh man, I shouldn't do it before work. Oh shoot, man, I just did. Oh man, I'm not. Then all of a sudden I'm not thinking straight. I'm in a leadership position in my life, whether it be at home, whether it be in business. I need to be on my A game. And I don't care who you are, man. You can tell me all you want about weed, but you are not on your A game if you're smoking pot. So my life became unmanageable, I think, is what we're driving at here.
I think too, like you know, like I said earlier when we opened up, like I heard your name before I ever met you because I heard you were a good AA and doing service work and helping guys, and people got a lot when you spoke out, you know. Did you, so it sounds to me, correct me if I'm wrong, like you were showing up to meetings stoned, stuff along those lines.
Yeah.
And like, dude, for me, I'd be so paranoid because let's call it what it
Dude,
is.
It sucked,
dude.
yeah.
Yeah, like, for what it's worth, man, if you're in a 12-step program, you have like a reputation to uphold, so to speak. And like, I know a guy like me, I'm like, I'm supposed to be this way, but I'm actually doing this in the dark.
Yep.
Like, dude, I couldn't sit through a meeting stoned.
It's no way to live, and it tormented my soul and tormented my spirit, man. It's the reality of it. So it was not, to me, you're not sober if you're smoking weed. Yeah. And I'm sure there's arguments to be made. I mean, maybe maybe they have cancer. Maybe I'm sure there's instances where that could be medicine, and you're in a certain type of scenario in your life with some kind of terminal illness. But just if you're a regular person in a regular situation that isn't faced with anything like that, you're not your best self. And the whole point of me being sober is to be my clearest, best self. And it's just not that. So, no, I'm with you, Tom. In my experience, it's not sober.
I want to reiterate something that you said earlier, too, because one of the things that I hate hearing from treatment centers is when a therapist or a treatment center employee looks somebody in the eye, just like you said, and say, if you smoke weed, you're going to end up with a needle in your arm again. I don't think that's true. I don't think you should sit there and lie to someone and tell them that.
Yeah.
Now, if you said that mistakenly because you haven't been educated on it, fine, we'll let it slide. But the thing is like you just said, smoking weed separated you from family, separated. What I'm getting at is, and we talk about this all the time, but I want your take on it too. There's the direct cause and the indirect cause.
Yep.
Like, I don't want to smoke weed today because I wouldn't start shooting heroin and fentanyl and meth because I smoked weed. I'd smoke weed all day, every day if I started.
Yep.
However, what would happen is, like I was just getting at, I wouldn't show up to meetings anymore. I wouldn't want people to know. Like, I'd be paranoid. So it would take me away from everything that got me sober to begin with and was keeping me sober. Like, so there's not necessarily this direct correlation. Maybe there's people out there, like, they take one hit and then next thing you know, they jam a needle in there, I'm sure. But I think for the majority of people, that's probably not the case, and you're telling them a lie. And when they don't immediately jam a needle in their arm, then they're like, oh, look, this is working. That's and then exactly next thing you know, it's like time release pain. It just, a year down the road, your life is in shambles, and it happens slowly.
It does happen slowly, and my addiction and alcoholism want me isolated, and they want to destroy my family, destroy my relationships with them, destroy my relationships with my friends, and cause division. And that's exactly what, if you are a member of a 12-step program where abstinence is the admission ticket, right? Smoking marijuana is not abstinent. And when I say it's the admission ticket, what I mean by that too is that's just the tip of the iceberg, man. The blessings come through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I have to be abstinent from drugs and alcohol to even get on that path. Mm-hmm. Once I'm on that path, it's not just about not drinking and doing drugs, man. It's about opening up a whole new world that's beyond my imagination. And in here too, peace, joy, the ability to walk through uncertain times and challenges with a sense of confidence and knowing that I'm going to make it through the other side of this, probably better off than how I went into it. I'm going to grow through it, and my relationships around me will flourish, and my relationship with God will continue to grow. That's what it promises, man. That's what it's all about. I just can't go down that road because I've tried. If I'm smoking weed, I've tried to have it both ways. It does not work for me. So
when you're going into these meetings high, why bother?
Well, Ben said it best, right? This reputation to uphold becomes a matter of pride at that point. And you have to now start to wear the mask, right? That's what happens. So I don't want anyone to suspect anything. So imagine this internal dialogue now. Now your whole dialogue mentally turns into, well, I don't want to be looked at this way, or I don't want somebody to think this of me or that of me. Not you're completely consumed with self, but to answer your question, that's why. It becomes about not getting caught. Why? Because I don't want to get honest. Why don't I want to get honest? Because I don't want to feel shame. Because I don't like that feeling. But here's the reality of it. No honesty, no recovery, man. I can't stay clean, living dirty. We've heard that 1,000 times. I can't be clean and smoking weed at the same time. It just doesn't work. So,
what made you get honest?
I was at a point in my heart and in my spirit where I knew what I wanted in life was to walk down this path of recovery and 100% abstinence. And I knew and had enough experience that the only thing that was standing in the way of that was pride, and that the opposite of pride is humility. And the best way to get humble is to get honest and share what's going on in your life. So I wanted the fruit of that because I had had a taste of what that fruit's like. And I wanted that in my life permanently. And I was just ready, man. I was ready to not compromise my integrity anymore in my life.
There's something you said earlier that sparked a thought for me, this fallacy that we have, I think, as men, to be honest with you, where, you'll see people post up on social media or they'll say it here in groups or whatever, I don't care what other people think about me. Bullshit.
Yeah, nonsense.
Everybody does, unless you're sociopath, yeah.
Well, it
which
matters.
is diagnosable.
It matters what people think.
It does. Like, that drives me crazy because I just know people are being so dishonest with themselves. Like, dude, I care what people think about me.
Yeah. You better start if you don't.
Yeah, you really should.
So when you got honest, who was the first person you got honest with?
It was my wife.
And how'd she receive it?
Oh, she didn't know the whole
who's
time?
also in recovery, yeah.
How'd you hide that?
Man, I'll be honest with you, I don't know, dude. I really don't know. But I know that I knew that I needed to go to her first, and subsequent to that was immediately just my people in recovery, and it was time to really dial in and really what I call is tightening that 10th screw. Which that 10th screw to me was, it was never about Mike to begin with, and I always thought it was about what I was going to get out of the deal. That 10th screw is, it's not about you. It's about what are you going to bring to the table once you receive this gift. That was the 10th screw. And I needed to fall again to really understand that in my heart. Not just in my head, but in my heart. And that's what took it there, man. And that's what made me ready too, Tom, is I really wanted to grow up and be a man that brought value to other people's lives.
And that's real courage. In this case, in my opinion, tightening that 10th screw was service to others. Mm-hmm. Because getting vulnerable and being authentic like that in a meeting and admitting to people, dude, takes more courage than like just doing sobriety perfectly and you got nothing to hide.
Yeah.
Like that's a hurdle. I have a sponsee that I love him to death, dude, and he had significant sobriety time, years and years. And he drank and hid it for 6 months. Mm-hmm. But it ate him up so badly. And somebody finally called him out that actually witnessed it, but he didn't know that they witnessed it. And he had called me up because he had been not told me for 6 months either, that he did this on vacation. And when he had all this fear about it, and when he went into our home group, our men's meeting, and like told everybody, literally everybody clapped for him.
Yeah.
Like, dude, you got honest. Like, look at what that show of courage and a display of those principles. Like, I ended up sharing afterwards. I'm like, I have more respect for you now than I even did before. I respect him a ton before, like a brother, but in this case, like to overcome that fear and put it out there, dude, that's commendable.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. And I'm glad that he did that, because that right there saved his life. Mm-hmm. It saved my life. And I think we all love a comeback story, man. So we're never angry with someone because they fell. We might be hurt. We might be scared. We might be concerned because we love somebody, but we're always going to welcome somebody back with open arms and be grateful that they were willing to get honest and look to change their lives and go down the right road instead of, continuing down that wrong road, which is really a dishonest path. That's what it is. I'm dishonest because I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed because I'm doing something that I know that I'm not really allowed or supposed to be doing. So the best way to nip that in the bud is to get honest, man. And that's why I was able to talk with my wife, who we just looked at each other like, what you need to do, man. And but internally it was that 10th screw that it needed to get tightened. And that's what we've really been working on this past year. And it's been amazing. It's been a lot of work. It's been beautiful work. It's been challenging. At the same time, going through this health issue of losing my right hand. I'm right-handed, and watching that slowly come back, learning how to practice patience, even to the tune of, man, they say doing a 4th step is painful, right? Well, mine was physically painful because that's how I started to learn how to write again. I'm having to learn how to do all that again. So not only was I going through this healing of an internal brokenness, but learning how to manage an external brokenness and walk through the healing process there, which is not a fast one. It could be a couple years before this comes back. So it's been a kind of a crazy dichotomy there, and in this internal healing and external healing going on to move me to a higher place to be able to really be of service, man. That's it. Can't take this stuff with us, man.
Yeah. I have a question, like on a totally different topic, dude. AA boy meets AA girl in AA rooms. Both are good AAs. You're married to somebody in recovery.
Yeah.
What's that like? I'm giving you a blank slate to talk about that.
Man, that's a whole other podcast, but I'll put it to you this way, man. It's great when you're both in AA, but you both have to be actively working a program of recovery. Not dry, not just abstinent from drugs and alcohol, but active. We're both very active in the program. Mm-hmm. The first 5 years of our marriage was awesome because we were both active. The last 3 years have been awesome because really both of us active, aside from me, like I said, that 10th screw needing to be tightened. But my wife's, she's in a great place. She's 3 years sober, sponsors women. It's an answer to a prayer. There was a time where I thought she'd never make her way back to the rooms because you're the problem, Mike. You're the problem, Mike, as she's, sipping her booze and being a total alcoholic and in denial. It's a miracle that we've made it through. I don't think most couples would have. We've done plenty to hurt each other, hurt ourselves, and hurt our families, but we've always loved each other so much, and we always had that reference point of what our relationship and our marriage could look like based on what it did look like when we were both active in a program of recovery. So it's great. It was great back then. We had a rough paper route for about 10 years there, off and on, and the last few years have been everything I could have imagined in my entire life. And we're more in love today than what we've ever been. So it can be beautiful, but it can be equally as destructive.
If you're not working
the program. So
dude,
yeah.
12 steps can be applied to anything. I think, like, to be straight up with you, if you apply 12-step principles to your marriage, because we make mistakes. For instance, if you're making like proper amends back and forth within your marriage and taking honest inventory of yourselves, like, dude, it's a perfect formula to make a relationship work.
It's amazing.
It really is.
Because, like, both people are accountable. Mm-hmm. And that's an amazing thing when your wife's able to be accountable. That's a blessing. That's a gift of recovery itself right there.
That was good. I mean, it hasn't been an hour, but because you're such a good talker, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like that was very, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Point driven.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, there's people that come across, and this applies to you, Mike. You're very good at transponding a measure of recovery. Like, you communicate it very well in simple terms that are understandable. It's a gift that some people have. Some people don't have it. I'll just call it what it is. But like, utilize that. And I believe, going back, I'm repeating myself, but I believe that's why I've heard your name before I even met you. Like, we got guys like Eric, whose reels are blowing up right now.
Yeah.
You see a dude with the mohawk and a braided goatee sit down with tattoos on his head.
An amazing guy, by the way. I mean, my wife and I attend probably 3 or 4 meetings a week with him. He's a total blessing in my life. The way that he's able to unpack the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, I've never seen anything like it in my entire life. Yeah, you give me a topic, I'll go off on a tangent for you, I'm sure, and hopefully put it in terms that are relatable to other people. That guy has just a special gift to be able to communicate what the essence of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous is. So I love that guy. Love the guy you had on last week, Zach Brakey. Wanted to mention him, my best friend in the world.
Yeah.
I bring him up because he is a gift of this program. He is a gift from God in my life. One of the hopes I think that any one of us has as we grow in life and get sober, and especially as men, is to have strong men, and I don't mean necessarily just physically, but men of fortitude, men of honor, and men of integrity that are there to uphold us when we're shining and even when times are tough.
Now, don't blush, but he said the same thing about you.
I get myself choked up.
No, literally, he went off on a tangent about you guys being best friends, and that comes down to Mike's crying. Yes. Zoom in.
I still didn't get the Real Recovery Talk tissue box, so you're gonna have to go tissueless. But
to Mike's point, man, having good men in your life, look how it can affect them emotionally. I wish we could zoom in right now.
Well, we are right there.
Yeah.
So.
But dude, that's the kind of relationships you can have as a result of recovery, as a result of working 12 steps, being spiritually awakened. It's a beautiful thing. Dude, I haven't told this one in a while, but when I get a new sponsee and they call me or I see him in person, you get that dude that thinks he's all rough and tough from the streets, and I'll be like, as we're leaving, I'll be like, I love you, man.
Yeah.
Or I'll leave the man off. I'll just be more direct. I love you. And they
jams them up, man.
And then it takes them a few times, and finally they look you back after meeting with them for a few times. Love you too.
Yeah.
I'm because most men walk in there, I'll never tell another man I love him.
Yeah.
Dude, and I need men in my life like that.
Yep.
I do.
Yep.
I think saying that if men are saying they're not capable of that, they're selling themselves short, dude.
I agree, man. Iron sharpens iron, right, Tom? I mean, we need that. We need other men in our lives. Women need other women in their lives that are going to build them up and hold them up and pour into them. And that's been such a tremendous gift too. Is God in AA putting people in my life that that I wouldn't have without them, and B, that teach me how to be an honorable man and how to live an honorable life. So it's all a gift. It's all a blessing, man. And like I said, I serve a God who makes crooked places straight, man. He took a path that was a jagged course for me, and he really was patient with me, and allowed me the opportunity to make my own mistakes, was gracious along the way, caught me when I fell, allowed me to experience consequences because we need them, but on the same token, always gave me the grace to get back on the right path. And I could say for the first time in my life, I'm on a road that I feel really, really good about, man. In every way, shape, and form. I feel that I don't have any secrets today. That's a great feeling, right? No secrets. I live an honest life. Not that I live some crazy dishonest life, but I always held on to little things. I would tell you part of the story, Ben, Tom, you part of it. The whole truth, whatever was going on with me was out there if collectively everyone I knew got together and compared notes, but nobody ever got the whole story because I didn't want to be accountable. I was accountable to you about one thing, Ben about another thing. Now, man, look, I told you everything today, man. There's nothing to hide, man. So you guys know what I've been through in my life. You've seen what I walked through. We have the joy of, knowing each other more intimately than what we're talking about here. And I just appreciate you guys having me on here, man. I really do. And hopefully somebody relates or it helps somebody. And
it will.
But just really grateful to be on here today, man. Thank you guys.
That was a perfect wrap up. Ben, any final thoughts?
No final thoughts.
Mike, anytime you're welcome on.
Next, we're going to talk about how do you beat The Celsius addiction, man.
Maybe, well, you don't have to, maybe you don't beat it. You just ask them to sponsor the show.
Look, if you can't beat them, join them.
Yeah.
Right?
Celsius. Hey, people in recovery drink energy drinks. You know, that's all I'm going to say.
I'm like a binger with that. Like, I'll go weeks and weeks without drinking them, and then all of a sudden I have one, and then all week it's like a thing. All of a sudden I'm buying a case, and then I'll go cold turkey off. Like
classic alcoholic, Ben.
Bro.
Ben, I should have worn my sunglasses today.
That's not funny, Tom.
Your legs.
Let's hear it. Yeah, tell us why, Tom.
Holy smokes, those puppies. You need to wear a thong out in the sun or something.
All right.
Or just wear those
I'll go down to
shorts.
South Beach.
There you go.
Yeah.
Another gift of recovery, Ben, is men can compliment each other's quads without feeling any kind of way about it. So your quads look great, man.
Thanks, Mike.
And I love you.
I love you too.
He doesn't even do squats.
Hey, we should tell Tom we love him. Tom, I love you.
I love you guys.
Oh, wow.
All right, that is it for this episode of Real Recovery Talk. Thank you for tuning in. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you can always reach us. info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, that's info@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message. That is it. We will see y'all later.